Be smart, dummy, dummy, be smart. He said that fool, you weren't cool. He took a book to your school. Be smart, dummy, dummy, be smart. Don't get shocked if you get mocked. It's what you find when you use your mind. Don't you sweat it, look 'em in the eye. Don't regret it, hold your head high. Be smart, dummy, dummy, be smart. Try to show some tenderness, even when they're playing chess. You think it's dumb to be smart, but that's the way you make art. So be smart, dummy, dummy, be smart. Use your brain, that's a start. It's okay to be smart. Don't you think that you are cool? Sorry, dummy, the joke's on you.
Hi, I'm James Zeed, and this is Change Your Mind. And I live in the divided states of America, and I think that we're divided for a reason. We're at each other's throats often because we disagree with one another, and we don't listen to each other. We don't change each other's minds, and we try to. And so what I have decided is that I'm going to try to change my mind and show other people it can be done, because we are taught how to change our minds, how to think about things differently. And we don't have that skill just by, it seems like by osmosis from others. So we seem to be stuck in our ways, stuck in our thoughts. And so I have brought up various subjects, and I wanted to know, like, how can I think about them differently? And so today I thought about, art. Like, what is my reaction to art? And I understood art when I was growing up. Like, I understood portrait art, landscape art, and then they started getting a little bit different, and there was this thing called abstract art, and I didn't understand it. So I brought a guest on today, Natasha Wein, and she's what they call a contemporary artist, whatever that means. So Natasha, hi Natasha.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm great.
And are you prepared to tell me a little bit about contemporary art?
Yes, I am.
You are. Okay. Well, one of the things that you sent me was a couple of your photos. So I wanted to bring this up and ask you a couple of questions about it, because I took one look at it, before we went on the show, and I said to myself, well, okay, why is that art? Can you tell me why we call this art and not just some random paint thrown on a canvas?
Sure. So I used to hold pretty limiting ideas about art that you may be holding right now about what good art is or what real art is. And I was talking with my painting mentor, and
I did a dumb thing.
the beliefs I was holding these beliefs that real art or good art was just hyper realism, and that everything I had to do had to look like it does in real life. And
That's what I was thinking. Yes, that's my start too. Yeah.
And so my painting mentor said to me that while hyperrealism, of course, takes great technique, and it's not particularly interesting or ripe for learning. And I don't mean that as a negative critique of people that do this incredible skill. It's just not as open to your imagination. And so I was pretty resistant to getting into abstract art at first. As a kid going through museums, I'd feel borderline enraged, being like, I could do that as a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
So it's been really interesting to kind of understand what the value, at least for me, is for the process of making abstract art and sharing it with others.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say abstract art is really open to imagination, and it's really ripe for projection and analysis. So my process personally is based on projection and analysis, both with what's in front of me as I'm painting and the symbolism embedded in process. So what it means to use certain tools and how that relates to things I'm up against in my life. And so you see sort of what you want to see in your life. Everyone has a very different perception based on what they've been through. So working with my art in this way, I was really learning a lot about myself, and it gave me a way to...
You're talking about this painting as an example?
Yes. So let me talk specifically about this piece to give an example. So this piece is 4 feet by 2 feet. So it's pretty large and pretty long. The process for me when I was painting, this was done in 2019. I was working on pieces, and the first layer I was laying down with my hands and kind of chaotic movements. And the second layer I was laying down with palette knives. So I intentionally went away from using the paintbrush because the paintbrush lends itself to very sort of careful movements, predictable movements. And I really wanted to tap into the unknown and the unconscious and really just like journey into imagination and the unknown. So before I paint, I have no idea what I'm going to paint. And as I go, I learn about what I'm going through internally, both my personal unconscious and sort of the collective unconscious. And so this piece in particular, um, that the top layers where you see those vertical lines, that was applied with like a sort of 2 foot, like flat wooden tool. And I like very quickly pushed it down and did like one swoop of the paint. And when I propped it up against the wall, I sort of saw like a body. It was about this, roughly rough
Oh,
size of a body.
okay.
And you can see that there's like that top part is almost a suggestion of a circle or a head, and the bottom part is a suggestion of a body.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
I get
this
it. Now that you pointed out, yeah.
so this piece held the title a band. It was under a family of 5 paintings in
Uh-huh.
an exhibition I had called Origin Stories. And it was under the family called Body, and this one was called Abandoning. So my relationship to this piece and what I was going through at that time in my life was sort of what it means to abandon your body when it feels like something it's so unbearable to face something that you've been through. And so there's sort of a violence in the abandoning of yourself. And so to me, that was personally the meaning to me. But honestly, I think the most powerful part of abstract art for me is talking to other people about it. So when this was up in the gallery, within an hour of opening, I had 4 or 5 people standing around it, all sharing what they saw. And a couple people saw a forest, because when you see it in real life from far away, it looks sort of like trees and like the foliage at the top with sort of the chaotic movements.
Okay.
And it was so interesting to me because as we shared our different interpretations of the painting, it was sort of a beautiful way of coming back to the reclamation of the body through seeing it as a natural forest of collective beings.
Okay, I got to stop you for a moment just because you dumped a whole lot of stuff on my head, and I'm not entirely sure I processed it all. So I want to get back to like the ultra realism that you mentioned at the beginning, because I think that was before we had the ability to use cameras and take photographs and that sort of thing. So the ability to recreate something precisely would have been of high value. And
Sure, but
yeah,
regardless of whether or not we had cameras or not, it's still a rendition of something we see in real life.
right.
And so it's not exactly a new interpretation to it because it's something we can literally see. Abstract art touches on sort of the psychic landscapes, the
Yes,
emotions
I'm going to
experience.
get there. The other thing that I know that going through museums is you see a lot of religious art because those are the people that could afford to pay the artists to create works. So the artists weren't really creating something from inside themselves so much as they were what the patron wanted to see. And so now we're getting into a world where the artists are expressing themselves. And when you're talking about your own personal unconscious, the collective unconscious, you're drawing on that. And what I got out of your process is that you don't know what you're going to do. Don't have an image in your mind that you're reproducing. You're just letting something that is not yet articulated be expressed on the canvas or
Mhm.
whatever it is that you're using.
Yeah.
Is that accurate? Am I following it?
Yes. And when you do that, it gives you a way to tell a story that previously was wordless, which then gives you power over the stories you tell about your life.
That is so profound. I found that to be true in my life is and many people that I know, if they can articulate what it is, then all of a sudden there's a freedom that's associated with that.
Yeah.
Over my head, you can see a book that I wrote about it. It's that kind of expression that's when you can't do it, you feel bottled up. And there's something inside you that you want to get out, but you don't know how. And so some people can write, some people do poetry, some people do art. And what you're teaching me right now, you're starting to change my mind about this kind of stuff. Like, it's one thing I could get how different people would interpret it differently. But what I'm learning from you is the process that you underwent to create it in the first place. So
Mhm.
what it meant to you, not negating what other people see, but what it meant to you, how you got it out. I mean, how did you tap into it? You just started to paint?
You have to have the courage and give yourself the permission to go anywhere deep inside of yourself to unknown, scary places. It takes a surprising amount of courage to approach a blank canvas and
Wow.
not know what you're going to do and let yourself be open to whatever comes up because you can't consciously edit it out like you could say if you were painting a still life.
Right. And so you can't really say, well, that's not right. Or
No.
you can't say that color looks wrong. I'm going to change that color. You can't do that.
Well,
You
you
can?
I mean, you could, but I always look in what the meaning is in it. So there's not exactly a right or wrong way to paint. I see it
No.
all as communication. So I respect my paintings as if they're another being trying to communicate something to me. So there are times where I'm finishing up a painting and I notice that there's some color that is competing with another color and I want one of them to be like the more powerful vocal point. And so I might intentionally, like, it's not just
Highlight it.
random.
Or
It
yeah, yeah.
takes actually a lot more skill than people realized and that I realized as a
Uh-huh.
kid to mix paint, create colors that harmonize, and make a balanced composition that makes sense. Um,
You're kind of blowing my mind. Okay, so this is now something that's communicating back to you.
yeah, exactly. It's like a very much a call and response between the piece.
Oh, that's fascinating. Now, do you think that people who observe it in a gallery, do they experience that too?
Do they
Or
experience
it would depend on the person, obviously, but
the call and
can they?
response, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, people will be so generous with me and what they see. They'll stare at a painting and they'll just kind of narrate what's going through their heads. And it's really interesting because a lot of people don't realize that what they're pointing out that they see is not an objective truth. They're telling me their story and they often don't realize that. And so they're like, some people will be like, oh, look, it's a goldfish trapped in a tank. And it's like, I meet them where they're at, but they don't realize that like someone else saw like freedom or someone else saw birth or
Yeah.
it gives you a way to really like connect with people. And after having this discussion with like 4 or 5 people staring at this painting, like someone formed such an attachment with it through that discussion that they bought the piece. So within an hour of it being opening, like that piece now has a home. So it's not just about the aesthetic; it's also about the story, the narrative, and your relationship to it.
And so what was really important to you might not be the story that they bought.
No, and at first that was challenging for me because I was like, my art means this. And now one of the most beautiful things about creating is when you make art and you put it out there, it's public. It's public property. People can do and say whatever they want with it. And it's sort of freeing. Like I don't take things personally when people are like, I don't like abstract art or this looks like a 3-year-old did it. Like, okay, like one of the reasons I love teaching kids is they haven't internalized this idea of what good and bad art is. So
Right.
their expression is just free and enormous, and it's beautiful to watch. So I personally don't value art as much on what age it looks like you did it or what someone chooses the price to be. I value art more on genuine expression, relationship, and narrative.
That's very, very interesting to me because, when I look at this kind of stuff, you know, and you just opened my eyes up and changed my mind in a way that when I look at some things and if it makes me uncomfortable, I don't like it.
Mhm.
But now I want to look at it and say, if it makes me uncomfortable, why?
Exactly.
Beautiful. Okay, you mentioned that there's a family, and I'm going to pull up what you sent me. This
Yeah.
is
So
this the family you're talking about?
yeah, so this exhibition had 5 different
Oh,
families.
body. Yeah, I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
and this one was called Body. And so I can briefly list the titles of them because it sort of has a relationship where that one's called Abandoning, and then the 2 smaller ones are titled Forming Skin and Blister, and that large red one is called Resist, and then there's a blue one up in the corner that you'll see on the next photo that's
Okay.
called Back Scratches Before Bed, which me and my sister used to scratch each other's backs before bed. And so that painting ending the series was sort of a reclamation of innocence and reclaiming my body as my own after going through some pretty awful things.
That's amazing, because now when I look at that, I see the abandonment. Well, only because I saw it with this and this.
Yeah. In juxtaposition, there's a sort of violence to that painting as compared to, say, the larger blue painting up at the top.
That's also very true. Now that you're teaching me a great deal about this, because none of that I could have articulated just by before you talking to me about this, just me seeing this. I couldn't have come close to saying what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm looking at it completely differently because you shared the process with me. Well, there's one more thing that I wanted to do. Let me hide this. And I think I can do this with us still on stage. Let me try, and if not, I'll restart. Because you sent me a video, and I want to play that, and let's see if that works. Let's see if. Oops. So far, so bad. I got the. Okay, here we go. Let me try again.
I was once an egg too, inside myself for insulation, round and bloody. I always thought hatching would be more like a somersault. I grow quicker than I can peck my way out or in. I ask my parents to smile for me one last time before I make a mess of all this hope. Every time I am rotten, I dig myself into the soil and start over again, from the ground where to decay is to renew. What a blessing it is to be always incomplete. Permission to burrow and then flourish into my most comfortable form, unexpected.
Wow, Natasha. Tell me, how did you create that? I'm going to just tell you my reaction. The first time I played that through, my reaction was, there's more going on about you than I had any clue of about as a person. And this way of expressing it is foreign to me. I write, and that's the way I express myself. I have no artistic abilities. I draw something and it's for comic effect only because people are going to laugh at it. And so I exaggerate the humor behind it. But what you expressed there was a very deep emotional experience through painting. Now, how did you find this ability within you to express yourself this way? Was it trial and error? Was it just you did it and it worked? Or
Yeah, I sort of stumbled into it. Like I first actually started painting more portraits and surreal, and then when I tapped into abstraction, it was like this whole world expanded. Um, the writing for me is actually quite important to the abstraction. I find the abstraction and the language together create a sort of third language. It's quite common. People will look at abstract art and they might feel a little lost or confused, or they don't quite know where to start or how they feel. And the writing sort of creates a guide through the abstract paintings, like a hook for people to latch onto and identify with the feelings of it. So I definitely really like to pair them together.
yes. Now that video was a little fast for me to go through that experience that you're just talking about, but I saw it. I
Yeah.
saw the ability to connect to a certain thing in a different way because of the narration behind it. And it worked, but I would want to pause it.
Yeah.
Because I think it's because I'm so new to this that I think with more experienced art lovers, the video would be easier for them than it was for me.
Yeah. Can we cut this part out? My bird is chirping, and I can put a cover on him so you can't hear him.
Sure.
Okay.
He doesn't like to be covered.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's all right. No pet abuse allowed. No harm. No animals were harmed in the making of this video. So, again, I want to just tell you my own reaction to this is a personal growth in looking at things completely different than I did. So this is a gift you've given to me, and I hope to some of the viewers out there that might be, as I was, a little put off by abstract art because I couldn't connect to it.
Yeah.
I didn't understand it. And as you just put your finger on, if it made me uncomfortable, my first reaction was I don't like it, rather than to say I should explore this.
Yeah. I think good art, in quotes, good art will make you feel anything.
Yes.
Your raids. If it makes you feel nothing, you won't connect to it. That
Right.
being said, though, different types of art will make people feel different things, and that's okay. So just
Right.
because you don't like a piece of art or I don't, it doesn't mean it doesn't have value to the creator or to the community.
Absolutely. And I also think about the reactions that I've had to art in the past. What am I reacting to? The colors, the contrast, the vibrancy of it, or is there a message that I'm trying to decipher? These are all still very confusing to me. And when you're presenting like water lilies, I can understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're saying that these are the colors that I saw when I was painting this, and they might not be the real colors, but this is what I saw. I can get into that. I can understand that. But what you're doing is expressing unarticulated feelings and putting them out there for others to see. So you use the word courage before that, and I would say it takes courage to reveal that, to get in touch with it in the first place, and then to reveal it so that others can perceive it.
Yeah.
But even though your experience has been, they might not get what you're revealing.
Well, they will see what they need to reveal to themselves.
Exactly. So that's a double gift. You're giving the gift to yourself of revealing it and going through that process so that you now know what this feeling that's making you uncomfortable, making you a little bit, like you want to change the way you feel. I don't like this feeling. But if you articulate it, all of a sudden you can be calm and look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
And this is a way for you to make progress as a human being. And then you give this gift so that other people can go through, however they do it, whatever their process is, whatever it is that they're revealing, they're getting something like that experience that you had for creating it.
Yes.
So art has value, doesn't it? Abstract art should be appreciated, shouldn't it?
I think so.
So what are you going to do about guys like me? How are you going to communicate to them? To what you've done, what you said. Do you have a forum that I can tell people about so that they can learn more about what you're doing? And
sure, sure. I have a website, and on my website, under the gallery tab, I have my past exhibitions, which can be viewed digitally. So I have both photographs of each painting, of the gallery, and of the writing involved.
Okay, so how do I get to your website?
www.nwinart.com.
Okay, I'm just going to put nwine.com. I'm going to scroll that across the bottom of the screen. Like that? How's that?
Oh, it's nwinart.com.
Oh, see? Can't take me anywhere. Oh, gosh. Okay, art. How do you spell art? I'm just teasing. Okay. So let me try this again. Wine art?
Yeah. And there's also some links to past interviews I've done where I go more in depth about the process of creating abstract art, how you can change your experience and your relationship to yourself and the world through it, and also how to sort of unpack limiting beliefs about what good art is. And, a lot of people are like, I can't make art or I'm not creative. But really everyone is. We just sort of are taught at a young age to internalize that we can't.
I've said that in other fields. You know, like when I teach people to play chess, I tell them, I'm teaching your kid. The parents come to pick up their kid, and I'm teaching the kid to play chess. I ask the parents if they play, and they go, "Oh no, too complicated." Look at your kid. If
And
you
it's a
could
really
learn, you could learn.
it's a really safe position to hold. Like, I have compassion for when people are hold like, "I can't, I don't want to," because it's really scary to encounter your limitations and your successes at the same time. So to try something new that you're gonna stumble around in also takes courage. Um,
Well,
yeah,
I had this person who told me it was a Reiki, a person who did Reiki. I don't know if you know what
a
Reiki is,
little
but
bit
it's
about it.
the energy healing kind of thing. And she said your chakra here is blocked. I want you to go home and draw and paint an orange. And so I'm like, I can't do that, but I did. You know, I drew a picture of President Trump, because it was orange. But I drew an orange, and I drew a lot of different things, and it wasn't art, but it was a self-expression. So I have some vague inkling of what you're talking about, but
Mhm,
I am really impressed by what you've accomplished. And so you've got this website with links to other interviews where you probably the host was more articulate than I was and asked better questions. Is that what you're saying? But in any case, you got more information out there for viewers if they're interested in pursuing this further.
mhm,
Because yeah, and I would say if you're made uncomfortable by work, that's a good sign. There's something there for you. And if you're afraid to produce something, what are you afraid of? Examine that fear. Like,
mhm.
why? Why am I afraid to produce something because others might laugh at me? I've been laughed at plenty of times. It doesn't hurt.
I think oftentimes we're scared to encounter our true selves, especially because vulnerable types of art like abstract painting expose our deepest truths, conflicts, and desires. And it's very, we have unconscious defenses for a reason. It's
That's
very terrifying to face your actual true self that you cannot edit.
That is really very interesting. That's one of the subjects of the book Freedom, which is above my shoulder there, um, exposed a lot of the things that I uh, did not face when I was younger. And
Yeah.
I found the courage to face them and then to express them so that others could perhaps learn.
Yeah.
And they may interpret it entirely differently. It's a different medium, doing art and doing writing are different things. But it seems like there's some similarities there with what you're trying to accomplish, trying to
Definitely.
express something deep inside.
Yeah, you're trying to articulate a truth. And even if you have an outline of what you're writing first, as you write, you're going to stumble your way into your truths.
Exactly. That was my experience, certainly. Well done, Natasha. I'm going to take you backstage. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing and spending time with me. I know, of course, I'm captivating and charming, so it was easy for you to do, but I still appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, that was Natasha Wein teaching me to change my mind about abstract art. So this was my way of saying I can be taught. An old dog can learn new tricks. So keep coming back and learn to change your. Thank you for watching this week's episode of Change Your Mind. And the Roman god Janus in my lower left-hand corner is going to be replaced by a more modern version because we can change our minds. And just remember, every weekend is a new beginning.